So welcome to Peer Evaluation Team Training. My name is Ron Cannon. I serve on staff at TRAX, and for some of you, I am your institutional representative. I've spoken to some of you on the phone. Some of you I've had face-to-face meetings with, and I'm glad to get to see some of you here this week. And there are some who are in the process of coming in, had some great meetings today, and I'm just thankful for that opportunity. Accreditation. How many in here have already, in one way or another, candidate level, accredited level, reaffirmation level, you have hosted an evaluation team on your campus? Okay, so you have seen the process that we're going to talk about today. You've seen this from the other side. We want to put you in that team room that met on your campus. We want to put you in that seat instead of feeling those nerves and in that anticipation of wondering what the visiting team's going to find. We want to put you in the other seat to give you an opportunity to experience the accreditation process from one side and not the other. You really don't have a complete picture of what it's like. And so I'm glad that you're here to participate in this. So what is the purpose of the accreditation process in general? Well, first off, we understand that the purpose is to provide and ensure quality educational programs. As Dr. Boatner mentioned earlier today, if an institution is seeking accreditation simply so that they can gain access into Title IV funds, we're really going to question the sincerity of that institution. But we all know that the real purpose of accreditation is to ensure that we're offering quality education to the students. Also, to assist the institution in the improvement of its entire operation by assessing both strengths and weaknesses. There's nothing like a self-study to let you know where you stand. Isn't that right? The accreditation process. What's the meaning of accreditation? When we say that a school is accredited or is working their way through the accreditation process, what do we mean by that? Well, we say the institution has demonstrated an acceptable level of compliance with the standards and criteria and has the prospect of addressing any identifiable weaknesses within a reasonable time. So there will always be areas of weakness. There'll always be recommendations and suggestions, right? But we have as an accredited institution or one in that process, we'll have the ability to address those weaknesses in time. Also, the meaning of accreditation means the institution has demonstrated that its educational programs possess a satisfactory level of quality. It's a stamp of approval, if you will. Further, the institution has demonstrated that it has the adequate resources to support the program. This one is a huge one. Adequate resources. And then next, the institution has committed itself to self-improvement and self-enhancement. So you can see that stamp of approval, that accreditation attached to your name, it means something. It means that you've gone through the difficulty to better yourself. You have sharpened those areas that are already sharp, and those areas that are dull, you're working on them. You're bringing them into shape. The accreditation process. Obviously, you're aware and you're convinced of its worth or you wouldn't be here. Accreditation in the United States is a voluntary, non-governmental endeavor. Now, when we say non-governmental, it doesn't mean that we don't have governmental oversight over us as an accrediting agency. It simply means your interactions are with us. It's non-governmental in that respect. Accreditation is a system of institutional self-regulation. Institutional means that the institution as a whole is considered rather than individual programs within the institution. I had a question just earlier this week. Someone was saying, well, what if we have a program and it's really not quite where it needs to be? Could we just kind of do that one on the side and have all the rest of the programs accredited? I'm like, no, you can't do that. We don't do programmatic accreditation. We do institutional accreditation. And from a TRAX perspective, the accreditation process is a peer review process. That's the beauty of it. You don't get a bunch of people who sit behind a desk who can't sympathize with your situation coming in and telling you what you ought to do. You get people who do the same things that you're doing every day that come in and help iron to sharpen iron. So what about TRAX role? What is the overview? What is the scope of our accreditation? Well, TRACS provides accreditation for Bible colleges or institutes, for Christian liberal arts colleges and universities, graduate schools, and seminaries. Pretty much anything from a certificate program to a PhD program. TRACS has the ability to give accreditation for institutions in those areas. And there you can see certificates, diplomas, associates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. Levels of compliance. Levels of compliance. Understanding that when you're coming in at the candidate level, so if you're serving on a team that is visiting a school that's up for candidate consideration, your task is just slightly different than it would be otherwise. Because those of you that have come through the process with us fairly recently especially, you'll understand that the expectation at the candidate level is just slightly different. The threshold's just a little bit different than it would be as you progress further through the process. So the levels of compliance. Number one, basic compliance for those at the candidate level is our IERs. Making sure that you understand what that means. Those are institutional eligibility requirements. It is taking and condensing the TRACS standards into what we consider the 10 most vital areas. There are other areas where you can be out of compliance and still gain the status that you're seeking, but not on these 10 areas. These are the essentials. These are must-haves before you enter in at the candidate level. So the IERs at the candidate level serve as the threshold for determining eligibility for candidate status. The institution is reviewed on the level of compliance with all TRACS standards. So your self-study is going to be written based on all of the standards, but the threshold for moving forward is those 10 IERs. Those that have come through at candidate level, you're very familiar with this terminology. Considering substantive approval, these are for schools that are going for accreditation or reaffirmation. This indicates substantive compliance with all of TRACS standards and these standards serve as the threshold. The institution is reviewed on all levels of compliance with all TRACS standards. So 2 different levels of compliance. So if you're on a visiting team that's visiting a candidate school, you understand that your task is to evaluate most specifically if they are in compliance with those 10 IERs. It doesn't mean we ignore the other standards, but we really want to see, we must see compliance in those 10 areas. If you're on a visit that is considering a school for accreditation or reaffirmation, you understand the bar is set just a bit higher. We would expect to see schools that have, at this level, those basic things are just a given. And we're expected to see progression in some of the more advanced standards, if you will, because not all standards are created equal. So what are the 4 major steps in the accreditation process? Some of you have been through this on the institutional side. Start thinking about it from the side of the team member, from the peer reviewer. Well, there's the self-study process and the self-study report. That school that you're going to be visiting, they're writing their self-study right now. And they're preparing it for your review. The self-study and self-study report. Once you get that self-study, you'll spend time looking at it, evaluating it, most especially in the area of your concentration. And then there'll be an on-site evaluation team. You'll be a part of that team. As a part of that team, you'll write a report. That report will be, a draft copy of that report will be in the hands of the institution before you leave town. They follow up, the institution follows up on that report with their responses. Some of you have been tasked with doing that for your institution. All of these various components come together. We'll talk about the various components that the commission will utilize in its consideration in a moment. But all of these various components will come together when the accreditation meets to take action on that institution and the status that they're seeking. And then the institution will do follow-up. So those are the 4 major steps in the accreditation process. What about the self-study report? The institution conducts a self-study and prepares a self-study report. You all know that begins with the actual self-study proposal, and then the final self-study is submitted to TRACS, and then it's distributed to the team members. Self-study addresses the institution's analysis concerning the level of compliance with each standard. The self-study report is supported with verifying documentation. The self-study report becomes the basis for the review conducted by the on-site evaluation team. Team members are selected while this self-study is being submitted, while the self-study is being finalized, just before the institution submits it to TRACS. The team members are selected by TRACS staff from a list of trained individuals, and they're chosen with care. Hereafter, I am assuming that if you'll follow through with this workshop, hereafter you will be on that list of trained individuals that we can call on. Because there's some school that needs your insight. I'll just be honest. There's some school that needs your insight, the insight that only you can bring. So I thank you for your willingness to go through this training. So your name will appear on the list of trained individuals, and when an opportunity that suits your particular situation arises, we'll give you a call. And we'll say, we need you to serve. Yes, Dr. Eaton.
I've been on over 30 site visits. I've never visited an institution when I did not learn something
Absolutely.
that I can take back to my own institution.
Absolutely.
To improve.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. Since we're just kind of encouraging people to follow through with this process, that is an excellent point. I had a young lady recently. She was new to her institution. This is just kind of an anecdotal thing just to kind of stoke the fires. She was new to her institution, and she was tasked with overseeing the writing of the self-study for her school. She'd never done it before. Nervous as all get out. She was so nervous. But when I visited her in preparation for finalizing the self-study, I realized this young lady, she's got it, she just doesn't know it. What she needs is confidence in order to successfully finish this thing. And so I twisted her arm, and I twisted the arm of the president of her institution, and I convinced her to allow me to do this training with her over the phone and by her looking at this PowerPoint on her computer. I answered all the questions that she had. She felt like she understood everything. I felt like she was prepared. I said, good, now I want you to serve on a team with me. What she didn't know is I had already talked to her president about it, and I says, now when she comes to you all nervous, I need you to kind of push her into it. And he said, I got it. Sure enough, she served on a team. She showed up. She was so nervous. Her voice is all cracking and shaking. By the end of the week, actually, by the way, she did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. By the end of the week, not only was she had made some new friends, she had learned about another school. At the end of the week, I said, so what did you think? And she said, man, we're finishing up our self-study. I can't believe I've got to go back and I need to edit this and I need to revise this and all of these. No school is perfect, but they're doing some wonderful things that we need to incorporate into our school. And I said, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And the same thing will happen to you. Like Dr. Eaton said, it doesn't matter how poor that school is, academically or any other way, you'll take something away. Well, I rephrased it. Doesn't matter how many recommendations that school ends up with. There'll always be something you can take away from it. So, I appreciate that insight, Dr. Eaton. Didn't mean to put words in your mouth, sir. The teams that we put together will vary in size depending on the institution and the type of visit. Generally, we're looking at a set number of team members, but obviously if we're going to a school that is much larger, maybe they have multiple schools that comprise a university setting, or maybe they have unique offerings that are not many of our other track schools have. You know, if they have a school of aviation or something like that, we may need to bring in a specialist here or there. But generally speaking, the team members, there'll be 5 team members most of the time. We'll talk about the composition of the team here in just a moment. And so one of the team members that will be chosen will be designated as the team chair. The workshop that took place previous to this one actually took those that have served with us on numerous teams and took them through the training so that they can serve as chair. So after several of you have served with us on a number of teams, we will see you in that workshop the next time. Okay? But one of the team members we designated as the team chair, they will work closely with the track staff in preparation for the on-site visit. Again, concerning the evaluation team, a track staff member will always accompany the team and will serve as a resource for the team. The staff person that will go with each team is not a part of the team. We don't contribute to the findings of the report. If there are any questions, if any clarification is needed, if the staff person, knowing the standards and the expectations maybe a little bit more precisely, if the staff person sees the team going in a direction or maybe making a decision that we know will come into conflict with something later, it's our obligation to point those things out. But generally, we're going to serve simply as a resource to the team and ensuring that things stay on track for a successful team visit. So that is the primary role of the track staff person. And an attempt will be made to match the experience and credentials of the team members with the needs that are specific to the institution. I know we mentioned this earlier in a previous workshop, but I think it bears repeating. How intimidating would it be? You're in a little small Bible institute with 45 to 50 students, and one of the people that we bring in is from a major university with 80,000 students in it. How long has it been since they were able to identify with a 50 student institution? Probably quite a while. So we make a real effort to match the team members with the kind of school that we're going to. And that will cover everything from the size of the institution to the degrees that are offered. If you are simply Bible school or simply a theological seminary, we're going to want to make sure that we put some people in there who have the same types of emphases at their school that you do as well. So we try to be sensitive to all of those things when putting together the teams. What are some of the basic purposes of an evaluation team? Well, first, to determine if the institution is in compliance with the standards and criteria. Your self-study will begin that process, but the team will then step in to verify that what the team is saying or what the institution is saying really is in place, to verify that those things really are in place. To help the institution to identify areas that need improvement, to validate the self-study report, and to make a recommendation to the Accreditation Commission concerning the status that is sought by the institution. At the end of the visit, one of the final pieces of business that will take place is the team will decide together their recommendation to the commission concerning that status. Say the school is seeking for candidate status, and your findings, you see that they really have met those 10 IERs. And they've done so without any major areas or major breaches in other areas, so there are no conditions that would be attached to their approval. Then that would be the recommendation. And there's an official form that you would use for that as a team. And so that recommendation would be forwarded to the commission as one of the pieces that they consider in this whole process. So the teams play a vital role in the process. In preparing yourself to serve on a visiting team, you're going to want to read and be familiar with. Now, we're not expecting book reports on any of these things. We understand that sometimes you read and not every single word sticks with you, but we want there to be a strong familiarity with the relevant tracts, manuals, and documents. So you should be somewhat familiar with the policies and procedures. Doesn't mean you have to have every policy memorized, but have a general understanding of how tracts conducts business. There'll need to be a familiarity with the accreditation manual, most especially in your area of focus. So if you're the IE or assessment person at your school, you're going to want to really be familiar with those track standards in those areas. If you're the finance individual at your school, you're going to want to really know what the track standards are relative to finance. Benchmarks for excellence. Dr. Buchner mentioned this morning. This is a book that we've had for quite some time. The staff is in the process of rewriting that. Basically what it is, it's a guide that allows an evaluator to look at an institution and say, where are they? On a scale of 1 to 4, where does this institution fit? Are they a 4? Are they doing everything over and above the expectations? Are they a 3? They're doing really, really good, but not really a whole lot more than what you would expect. Are they a 2? Boy, they really need to work on some things. They're doing some things okay, but they really need to work on a few other things. Or are they a 1? Well, these guys better get with it or something's going to fall away here. So, and those are my words. That's not how the benchmarks are worded. So what we do is we take every one of the major areas of evaluation and consideration, and we say a number 4 school would look like this in this area. A number 3 school would look like this. A number 2, and you get the idea. And we do that for each one of the major areas of evaluation. And that kind of helps to seal some things in your mind. So you'll say, well, let me read that definition perfectly describes this school. There are 3 in this area at least. So you get the idea. So we're working on that. We have a document that we have been using for years, but we've not even going to put it in our team packets anymore until we get it fixed. It's just so not applicable at this point. But that will be in our packets here relatively soon when we finish that up. There's also a visiting team manual that will be included with a packet that you'll receive, a visiting team workbook, just some additional guidelines, and then visiting team evaluation instruments. These are some of the things that you would need to be somewhat familiar with as you're preparing to serve on a team. Additionally, team members should read the entire self-study report. Remember, the institution has prepared this report. They've been notified that you're the one that's been selected to serve on the team in a particular area, so they will send you a copy of the self-study. The institution does that. They'll send it to you. How many of you have sent copies of self-studies to, see, you know what I mean. You'll be on the other end of that mail this time. You'll be receiving the self-study from the institution either electronically or in printed form or both if you so request it. And we want you to read through that. Obviously, the most scrutiny that you're going to want to pay is in the area where you are evaluating, okay? But you want to read the entire report along with all of the supporting documents and materials that are submitted by the institution. Analyze your particular area of assignment in detail. And then you're going to want to start putting together questions. Determine what kind of interviews are going to be necessary on site. Are you going to need additional documentation? Those kinds of things. So you're reading through, because this is your copy of the self-study, you're probably going to want to be taking notes. I need additional board minutes here to verify that this really is the case. I need to interview the librarian to make sure that she's doing this or that or the other. You get the idea. So you're taking these notes, and so when the visit is ready to start, you're already going to have a list of potential questions that you need to ask. You're going to have a list of people that you want to talk to get some clarity. You're going to have a list of additional documents that you want the institution to produce that are not already included in the self-study. Okay? That's the reason we wanted to get it to you at least 6 weeks in advance, so you have time to do that. Team preparation. As you're taking these notes, you also are going to be writing a draft copy of your section of the report. I would encourage each of you after this, go back to your own institution, and if you don't have one of these already, maybe you're just beginning this process, but if you have a visiting team that has been to your school before, go back and look at that report. You'll see what I mean. Each section has its own narrative where the writer is expressing themselves. They're telling what they've observed, what they saw in your self-study, what they were able to verify on site, what interviews yielded, and those kinds of things. So you'll begin preparing a draft copy of your section. And we use the word draft because what will usually happen, someone will show up on the first day and they'll say, well, here's my draft copy, and it'll be highlights all over it. And the highlight means this is something I think is in place, but I need to double check it. This is something I believe to be the case, but I need to talk to the president to verify it, or whatever the case may be. So it's a draft copy. It just kind of gets the ball rolling, okay? And also included with that is going to be that list that you've been putting together of the documents that you're going to want to see and the people that you're going to want to talk to. And if one of your concerns, if you can see right away that there's a standard where the school is out of compliance, you're going to want to go ahead and write up a recommendation on that, keeping in mind that this is a draft, okay? So a recommendation or suggestion if in order. And we'll talk about the difference here in just a moment. Team members should also prepare to discuss their initial thoughts and findings with the team during team meetings. So on that very first day that the team meets for that opening orientation, one of the things that you'll be asked is, okay, do you have a list of interviews and documents that you want to see? And we'll hand that to the chair, and the chair will facilitate that with the institution so that when you show up on the campus the next morning, they will have already had time to set up those interviews and gather those documents. Okay? Team chair establishes, and this is concerning the team chair particularly, the team chair will establish and maintain contact with the team members and the institution in preparation for the visit. The team chair, in conjunction with the track staff, coordinates the various aspects of the visit and provides support for the team members. And the team chair will take the lead in the team meetings. So the chair is a very important plays a very important role. What about the site visit? What are some of the insights that we can learn about the site visit? The team will evaluate, number one, the institution according to its mission. And that is a very important point that I really want to emphasize here. Each school has its own mission, has its own purpose. And so as a team member, we go in to help that school according to its established purpose. We don't go in there with an agenda. We don't go in there trying to change their purpose or try to project on them what we do at our school. We evaluate and help them based on their mission, based on their purpose. So the team will evaluate the school according to its own mission, and one of the major components of doing that is a self-study report that they've already submitted to you. The site or evaluation team visit is a major and required component of the overall institutional review process. A typical visit will usually last 4 days. Most of the time they're going to be scheduled on a Monday to Thursday or a Tuesday to Friday, depending on what works best for the institution. Some more information about the site visit itself. The team members will arrive on the first day, either a Monday or a Tuesday usually. Team members will arrive on the first day in time to participate in a team orientation in the late afternoon. Usually that'll take place sometime around 4:30, something to that effect. Team members will provide a list of individuals to be interviewed and or documents to be reviewed to the team chair at this orientation meeting. And generally speaking, now sometimes this schedule may change, but generally speaking, this is the schedule that we're looking at. Usually following this team orientation on the very first day, there will be a dinner or a reception of some kind held with the key administrators and leaders of the institution. This allows you're coming in as the CFO, this allows you to meet the CFO of the school. So tomorrow morning, when you see them, you're not going to see them for the first time. You'll be shaking their hand the night before. If you're the academic evaluator on your team, you will meet the chief academic officer at the institution the night before, and so on. And usually what we like to do is kind of have the team member doing the evaluation in academics sit next to the academic dean at dinner so they can go ahead and start talking and chatting. And you may find out things informally that answer some of your questions. So those are always valuable times. The second and third days are dedicated to interviews, meetings, review of documentation, and report writing. So that next morning and then the following, these are the activities that are happening. On the afternoon or evening of the third day, a draft copy of the complete visiting team report is compiled by the team. Required evaluation instruments are completed. So on that third day, we want to have a completed draft document. That's the reason it is essential that a team member come to that very first meeting with a draft copy of their section. Otherwise, you will have some very late nights. And then finally, on the fourth morning, an exit interview is held in the morning, on the fourth morning. And that's when we will give them a copy of the draft report and conduct the exit interview. A draft copy of the visiting team report, which will contain commendations, suggestions, and recommendations, is left with the institution for review and follow-up. The team makes a confidential recommendation to the Accreditation Commission concerning the status sought by the institution. We referred to this earlier. That'll be one of the final tasks that the team does, is make recommendation to the commission. So what are some of the things that you're going to be doing when you're on campus besides writing and talking to people and looking at documents? Well, pretty much everywhere you go, you're going to want to ask questions. It's amazing sometimes the things you can learn just in casual conversation. I was on a visiting team one time, and the institution told us they did not have residential services. They did not offer housing to students. Fine, we didn't see any housing. We weren't concerned about it, not in the least. It wasn't reflected at all in their self-study. Matter of fact, in their self-study, they explicitly said, we don't have housing. Well, I was serving on that team in the area of academic evaluation, and I was actually talking to a student about academic issues. And the student said, yeah, one of the guys that lives upstairs told me. And I said, wait, what? He said, yeah, one of the guys that lives upstairs. I said, what do you mean lives upstairs? Yeah, we have a couple of students that live upstairs in a makeshift dorm room. I said, okay, thank you for that. So I walked right over to the individual who was writing their report on student services. Says, oh, by the way, there's some makeshift dorm rooms upstairs you might want to check out. So there's no telling what you may find out. Sometimes it may be an uh-oh, and sometimes it might be, wow, you guys should be shouting this from the mountaintop. This is awesome. So you never know what you'll find out just from asking casual questions. You're going to want to visit classes in chapel. This is one of the reasons we always ask you when you're scheduling a visit at your school. Schedule it during school time. Don't schedule it during the summer. We want to visit classes. We want to be able to visit your chapel services if you have them. You're going to be reviewing documents, conducting interviews, having open meetings. Sometimes it may be a meeting where you and several other team members are talking to the whole board all at once. So it won't necessarily always be one-on-one interviews. You're going to want to take extensive notes. Talk to your other team members about your findings. Usually what you'll see is one team will say, yeah, I found the exact same thing. Or one person say, I was looking for the minutes to this particular board meeting and I couldn't find them. I was looking for them too and I finally found them over here. And so then what would have been a concern for you has now been set to rest. So make sure you communicate with your team members. You'll make recommendations and suggestions for institutional compliance or improvement. You'll participate in the writing and compilation of a comprehensive and cohesive visiting team report. These are the general duties of the team. Here's what a typical roster assignment would look like. Team member number 1, usually this person's going to be the chair. And most of the time, this person will have executive administrative experience or be currently serving as an executive administrator in their own institution. And the reason for that is because you can see, what are they evaluating? They're evaluating biblical foundations, purpose and objective, philosophy of education, ethical values and standards, operational authority, organizational structure, which includes the board, the administration, and the support staff. So we want a chief administrator to evaluate administration. So that's generally speaking. Some of these can be adjusted according to the particular need for the school or according to the experience level of the institution. For example, you could actually have the academic person serving as the chair. But generally speaking, this is what a team would look like. Team member number 2 would be overseeing or would be evaluating operational standards such as publications and policies and learning and library resources. So usually we're going to want to pull in, on this one, we're going to pull in someone who oversees the library services or the learning resources for their institution. Team member number 3 is generally going to oversee or give evaluation to educational programs. Undergraduate, graduate programs, any alternative delivery methods, which would include distance ed, branch campuses, teaching sites, any of those kinds of things. And generally this person will also give review of faculty and make sure that faculty issues are in compliance. So generally speaking, can you imagine what this person probably does in their own institution? Academic dean, most likely, yeah. Team member number 4, generally, this person is going to give review of the student services area, which would include intercollegiate sports, assessment, and research and planning. So most likely this individual There's going to be the assessment director, i.e., you get that. You get the idea. And then usually team member number 5 is going to be a finance person, the person that will evaluate in the areas of finance, general finances, Title IV compliance, if the institution participates in Title IV compliance. They're also going to want to give some review of facilities and equipment and health and security. If you'll notice, those are the major divisions of the TRACS accreditation manual. And under each one of those sections, there'll be various standards. So those team members will be responsible to evaluate the institution in light of those standards under their particular area. Okay, you've written the report, we've given it to them. What next? The institution responds. Following the team visit, the institution is given a set period of time to report errors of fact contained in the draft of the visiting team report. An error of fact is just as it sounds. It's something that we got factually wrong. They have 20,000 volumes in their library and we said they had 2,000. They're going to want to correct that. They want to set the record straight on that. They have 50 students and we said they have 500, or it could be any factual area. We have any factual error. We've said that they are in Los Angeles, California, and actually they're in Dallas, Texas. You know, anything that is factually inaccurate, we want them to have the opportunity to correct that. Now, what they can't do is they can't come back and say, no, the team said we're out of compliance here and we really are. There'll be an opportunity for that, but this isn't that opportunity. This is simply factual errors. Visiting team report is finalized by the TRACS staff once they've submitted errors of fact and they've been corrected. The report is finalized by the staff and a copy of the final report along with a response matrix is provided to the institution. A matrix whereon the institution will respond to each one of those recommendations and suggestions from the visiting team. The institution responds on this matrix provided according to the timeline set forth in the team report. The team report will tell them your responses are due in the TRACS office by a certain date. So now, they've submitted that report, that progress report back to their responses back to the TRACS office. The TRACS staff has evaluated it and determined whether they've been able to bring those areas into compliance or whether they're still in process. So there's all of these various components and pieces of the puzzle that are floating out there that the commission will need to consider and make its decision concerning the status for this particular school. So what are some of these things that the commission will consider when taking action? Well, first off, they're going to view the self-study report from the school itself. That same self-study that you evaluated, they're going to look at that self-study. They're going to want to take a look at the team report that you wrote. They're going to want to take a look at the recommendation that was given by the team. They also want to look at the recommendation from the staff. The staff recommendation will be based on the response of the institution on that matrix that they get back. They're going to want to take a look at those responses. They'll take a look at the matrix as well. And then on the commission level, there'll be 2 readers specifically assigned, 2 commissioners specifically assigned to that particular school who will need to know the ins and outs of that particular school and its situation in depth. And they too will fill out a recommendation form. So all of these various components are coming together, and then to top it all off, the institution is given an opportunity to appear before the commission and bring any updates that have taken place since the progress report was written. So all of these components come together to enable the commission to make a final decision concerning the status of the school. Okay? Follow-up. The institution is notified of the action of the commission, and you'll know it right away. The commission will dismiss you, they'll make a decision, and then they'll call you right back in to let you know what was decided concerning your school. But then you'll also receive official notification from the TRACS office, and you'll get another copy of that matrix, and this time you'll be able to see the things that are still pending that you still need to continue to work on. And then every 6 months, the school will turn one of those in until all of those areas are in compliance. Here's some additional things you might want to know. The institution, in conjunction with the TRACS staff, arranges for the airport and on-site transportation, lodging, and meals. Most of our team members will fly into a city nearby or in the city where the school is located. And you can feel free to make your own arrangements, your own travel arrangements on that if you want to. But TRAC stands ready to do that on your behalf. If you decide to make your own travel arrangements, you'll stay in communication with the young lady in our office who coordinates all of that for us. And she'll make sure that she passes on that information to the school, because the school will need to pick you up at the airport. If we make the arrangements, we'll make sure that we communicate those arrangements to the institution so that they can make sure to provide your transportation on the other end. The institution is also going to be making arrangements for your hotel. Each staff member, or each team member, will be staying in their own hotel room. We require that. We require that they put up the team in a place where it's, we're not looking at the Ritz-Carlton, but we do want something that's nice, something that's clean, a place that we can meet at the hotel, because there'll be work that we need to do there. A place that's nearby restaurants. The school has to provide transportation, all of these kinds of things. That's the reason that TRACS requires that upfront deposit, because we need to start making preparations and plans for all of these things. So then there'll be a team room that's provided at the hotel. There'll also be a team room provided on the campus at the institution. We want to make sure that wherever we are, there or at the hotel, that there's sufficient space for the team to work and do their writing and evaluation. Some additional things you might want to know. We also require that the institution provide a computer and a printer to be available to the team while on campus. Most team members choose also to bring their own computer, laptop, or such. If you're unable to bring your own laptop, we'll request that the school provide one for you. Usually they can do that fairly easily. So what are the responsibilities of the staff person that is going with the team? Well, to make the team assignments, to provide a roster and itinerary to all the parties involved, to make the travel arrangements, and to provide a packet of information to the team that contains forms. And I want to show you what one of those packets looks like here in just a moment. Additional reminders concerning the actual writing of the report. All recommendations and suggestions must be supported in the narrative which precedes the recommendation or suggestion. For example, if you're writing on the area of finance, one of TRAC standards requires that an institution have a 10% line of credit, 10% of the annual budget, or a contingency reserve in the equivalent of 10% of the annual budget. If you find as a team member that they don't have that in place, then obviously that rises to the level of a recommendation. The visiting team recommends that the institution initiate a 10% line of credit or contingency reserve, and then you put the standard number on there. But now anybody should be able to go back and read the narrative that precedes that recommendation. And if we read that narrative, we need to be able to find somewhere in there a review of documents indicated that the institution does not have the required 10% line of credit or contingency reserve. If something to that effect is not in the narrative, it will have to be inserted into the narrative. Well, why is that important? Well, it's important because if it's something that clear, it's easy for the institution to know. But what happens if you have a finding that rises to the level of a recommendation, but you don't give them specifics? All they know is they've got a recommendation. All they know is that they're out of compliance with a certain standard, but they don't know how to fix it. Well, how are they going to know how to fix it? They're going to know how to fix it because you've told them the area of deficiency in the narrative. So it's very important that any recommendation be supported by the narrative that precedes it. We don't include names in our report. We wouldn't say Mr. Smith or President Smith. We would say the president. An interview with the president, or in discussions with the student life director, something to that effect. The registrar, so we're not using names, we're using titles. Instead, whenever possible, we would want to combine recommendations. For example, the person that is doing evaluation in the area of assessment, maybe they see that the institution is not assessing student learning outcomes on a regular basis. Well, most likely the academic person is going to come up with that exact same conclusion, because those things are interrelated. So rather than beating them twice with the same stick, we're going to combine those recommendations. And if we need to, we're going to reference both standards that are in violation, but we're only going to hit them once. Okay? All right. You got doesn't it feel that way when you get a recommendation? Another thing, we want to use the wording of the standards or the benchmarks when we're writing the recommendations. It's the only safe way to go. I'm telling you, it's the only safe way to go. If you stay with the wording of the standards, no one will be able to call into question the validity of that particular recommendation. Here's an example. We had a team member one time. It was a team actually that I served on. I wasn't this person. No, I wasn't this person. But we had a team member one time who wrote, their recommendation was, Vision Team recommends that the institution initiate earthquake readiness regulations in their library stacks. Now, and see, because this person that wrote this was from California. And apparently there's a requirement in California that your stacks, your shelving, has to be anchored to the ground. Anybody from California want to attest to that? Apparently that's a regulation here for earthquake preparedness. You don't want the thing tipping over if there's an earthquake. Well, the problem is the team visit was taking place in Ohio. And so that was not the law in Ohio. It wasn't a state regulation in Ohio. So that institution was jumping up and down. What do you mean? Why? This is not the law here. Whereas if that person would have stuck with the standards, they would have been safe. So just an idea. Keep in mind using the wording of the standards when writing your recommendation. You're going to want to collaborate with other team members prior to finalizing the report. This is something that we do. You don't have to worry about trying to make that happen. We will cause this to happen specifically. You want to begin each recommendation or suggestion and commendation with this wording, the visiting team. The visiting team commends the institution for its exceptional security force that it has on the campus or whatever. Okay? The visiting team suggests that the institution consider adding additional life insurance for the president or whatever. See, remember, suggestions are based on professional opinion, not necessarily on a standard. And then, of course, visiting team recommends that the institution go straight to the wording of the standard. All right? Recommendations should be based solely on noncompliance with track standards. You want to cite that standard in noncompliance at the end of the recommendation. In conclusion, visiting team report should represent an accurate snapshot of the institution at the time of the visit. We're not dealing with future promises. We will pray with them and rejoice with them concerning future promises. But we don't deal with that in the report. The visiting team report should validate or refute the self-study report. And this happens quite often. Although the institution indicated in their self-study that a 10% line of credit was in place, interviews with the chief finance officer revealed that 50% of that line of credit has already been tapped into. Thus, the institution is out of compliance with this standard. So, the findings contained in the visiting team report should be supported by document review, interviews with key individuals within the institution. One final thought. The visiting team report should represent the team's overall assessment of the institution's compliance or non-compliance with TRAC's standards and criteria. One more thing, couple more things I want to discuss before we open it up for some questions. In addition to the PowerPoint worksheets that you got there, you also received this document. This is what allows us to put you into the system. We need to know what is it you're qualified and skilled to evaluate. We don't want to just stick you on a team not knowing what you're skilled to do. So this lets us know, hey, I'm qualified to evaluate in these areas. So we want you to fill this out. If you want to fill it out and return it to me or to the registration table before you leave, that would be fine. Otherwise, you can simply drop it in the mail and get it back to us. Okay? In addition to this, we'll be looking for a resume. Resume additionally helps us to know that you're qualified and have the credentials necessary to provide the evaluation and oversight for other institutions. I told you I would show you one more thing, and I will before we're dismissed. Once you're accepted on a team and once that whole process is in motion, you'll receive something that looks almost identical to this from the TRACS office. It'll probably be in one of these blue folders, actually. And this is your team packet. This does not come from the institution. This isn't the self-study. This is just a packet of information that we put together, provide to the team members so that they can process through this whole thing a little more easily. You'll see several documents in here. One of them deals with examples of poorly written recommendations. That one's funny. You'll get a kick out of that one. In other words, this sheet says, don't write them like this. These are poorly written. There'll also be a document called Benchmarks for Excellence. I referred to this one before. This actually is one of the older versions that we're still working and to revise, but it'll look a lot like this. Benchmarks for Excellence. Remember, this is that document that helps you kind of to determine in your own mind, are they a 4 in this area or a 3 in this area or a 2 or a 1? There'll also be an evaluation team workbook. Usually it's amazing. You'll see team members just kind of walking around with this one almost as their checklist. Each of the standards are listed in here. So usually they'll have this open to their particular area, and we're going to ask you to write down, beside each standard there's a little blank, and so you would write down whether your evaluation of the institution in that particular standard is a 1 to 4 on that as well. And then the evaluation instruments. This is a series of instruments that we use to evaluate everything from the self-study that the school submitted. There's an opportunity for the chair to evaluate the other team members. All kinds of evaluations in here. We're wanting to make sure that every aspect of the institution, every aspect of their self-study is clearly documented. For example, if one of the team members on this document evaluates the biblical foundation statement of the institution a 5 and everybody else rates it a 1, so some disconnect somewhere. Some of these instruments are done in connection with all of the other team members and they require consensus. Others are done independently and privately, so we want to be able to see some comparability. This is a vital part of what we do. One more document that we also deal with in our evaluation team packet that is not in this packet right now is our reliability and validity study. And Dr. Eaton is our reliability and validity guy. Is there any way you can, in a very brief moment, just kind of describe what that document does, what that process accomplishes?
Reliability and validity is simply a measure of your professional opinion of the overall institution. It is not meant to be a scorecard. We simply use it in the statistical procedures to actually measure the, not the appropriateness, but the consistency of the evaluator's opinions of the institution across all of the accreditation standards. And so it really helps us to see the effectiveness of our training, the reading, the self-study itself, and how the team is working together. Following your evaluation of the standards professionally, you will come together as a team and do a consensus evaluation. And so that's the team evaluation. But before you have any discussions, we ask for that professional opinion, and it just helps us to kind of see where we are in relation to the institution and the instruments themselves.
Wouldn't really be fair, would it, to ask our institutions to evaluate themselves coming and going and then us not participate in the same processes? So we do that. And we have actually made improvements to accreditation standards, manuals, publications based on feedback from these evaluations. So they are really a valuable tool. I'm done with the PowerPoint, but we would like to open this up for a time of question and answer. If you have any questions, if you don't know the answer, it's not a stupid question. So if you have any questions at all, we'd be glad to entertain those at this time. Yes, sir.
One of your slides said accreditation commission action. How often and where does that take place?
Commission action which will lead to a institution gaining status of one kind or another takes place twice a year, April and October. There are other commission meetings that are conducted in a different way, and they don't consider institutional status at those meetings. But meetings that are conducted which will lead to the granting of a status that an institution is seeking takes place twice a year, April and October. But visits to institutions can take place at any time. I've got 3 in December and 3 in January. My wife's going to shoot me. Anyone else have a question? Okay, great. If you do come up with some questions after today's session, please feel free, give us a call at the office or send us an email. We would be glad to answer those for you. We want you to feel confident in signing up to serve on visiting teams. Okay? Thank you for being here today.